Get social with us. Follow us on Instagram at Goodtaste TV. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Good Taste for the Soul. I'm Tangi Patton. If you love to eat out, then no doubt you're already looking forward to restaurant weeks, that fantastic time of year when all your favorite restaurants offer incredible menus at really bargain prices. Well, one of the first restaurant weeks in the entire country began in Houston back in 2003. The money they raised there for the Houston Food Bank is staggering. And one woman gets much of the credit. Its founder, Cleverley Stone. Cleverley passed away about 5 years ago, but her daughter, Katie, is now at the helm. Katie definitely has her mother's determination and her drive for success. Katie, welcome. I'm really glad to get a chance to get to know you a little better. And of course, everyone knows what restaurant weeks are. And in Houston, Houston Restaurant Weeks, one of the oldest events of all the restaurant weeks done all over the country now. And your mom is the founder.
Yeah, she, in 2003, she basically saw a need. She was quite honestly, Tangi, tired of seeing her friends laid off every August, which traditionally is the slowest month of the year in the hospitality industry. Not just in Houston, though. It's actually a nationwide trend.
Yeah.
August is just the month that they expect to, sell the least amount of food. And so that really hit her hard. It's tough in Houston for that to be a month where you're not earning money, because that's when kids go back to school, right smack dab in the middle of the month. And so, she said, you know what, we got to do something about this. And so Houston Restaurant Weeks was born in 2003.
So do you remember back in the very beginning? How old were you?
Oh, I definitely remember. I was in my 20s. I was kind of out of college. I fondly describe Houston Restaurant Weeks as the sibling that your mom had when you, like, after you left home, like your mom got
Yeah.
remarried and then like another kid pops up. That's kind of what HRW is for me, because if you remember back then in 2003, this was still pre like a lot of the social media, a lot of the like big Facebook boom.
Yeah.
We were still using Microsoft Front Page like to design all the websites, and it was just yeah, oh, I know. And so back then it was, domain names would cost you $100 a year for
Yes.
one domain. And so, back then it was a lot of me kind of helping to bring her up to speed. Like, what's Facebook?
Right.
Why is this beneficial for your business, for your brand? She had a radio show at the time, the Stevens and Cleverley show, which was Houston's only food talk and radio show on the air at the time. And so it was a lot of, let's register this domain and let's kind of put all this groundwork in. I often go back, Tangi, and I look at, past emails, correspondence back and forth, because again, this was kind of like texting wasn't even like a really big thing at that
That's right.
time, right? And so email. So a lot of my communication with my mom back in that time was done via email, because she was a night owl. Well, guess
Yeah.
what, I was too. And so it was not uncommon for me to get an email at 2:39 in the morning, saying, hey, do you like this new headshot? Or, hey, which
Aw.
hairstyle is better for TV, this one or this one? And then also, hey, Houston Restaurant Weeks is starting again. Can you help me with, adding a page on the website, because we did something else this year and I don't know how to do it. So back then it certainly was, it was definitely a mother-daughter, kind of passion and new discovery of like, wow, this is a really cool event and it's helping people too.
No, it absolutely is. I can remember I used to sit on the board of the group that puts them on here. And here, I'm not in San Antonio, but it was in San Antonio, and that Houston's was always looked at as a model. It's always had a wonderful reputation. It's always been incredibly, incredibly successful. How many millions have you guys raised for the food bank there?
Oh gosh. So it's over 22 million at this point. We haven't yet had our
Wow.
2024 check presentation yet, so that'll happen in
Ah,
May. Yes. So I want to keep the number a little vague for the moment
yeah.
now, but I want to say on the website it's published over 21 million. Without giving too many details away, we'll just be safe and say, okay, it's over that. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. It was around 2012 that I believe was the first year that Houston Restaurant Week surpassed the $1 million donation mark. And that was a really big deal in Houston. I remember
Mhm.
Mayor Anise Parker there was a whole presentation on the front steps of City Hall, and it was Cleverley
Big deal.
Stone Day, and it was a really cool. I think it's in October 11th or 10th, one of those 2 days.
Yeah.
And at that point, it had also become the food bank's largest fundraiser too, which was just a total surprise for them, right? I mean, they
Yeah.
have entire staff, dedicated to fundraising and events, and then all of a sudden, here comes this event along, down the street from them in Houston, Texas, and it turns out to be their biggest annual fundraiser. So
Yeah. Well, it's a great
since
event. For people not familiar with it, with restaurant weeks, there aren't many left that don't know what it is, right? But it's the best deal ever. Literally, you go into the restaurants that participate in Houston has an incredible participation rate, and you can have a bargain. Really, now it's expanded: breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner, and proceeds from each meal sold go to the Houston Food Bank, right?
Absolutely. Yep. So lunch, brunch, and dinner are the available price points for Houston Restaurant Weeks. And it's either $3, $5, or $7 from each meal sold that goes to Houston Food Bank. And from each dollar that they receive, they're able to convert that into 3 meals. So when you look at,
Wow,
a 21 million or 22 million, wherever how much, multiply that times three, and then that's how many
wow,
Houstonians or how many meals, so you're what, 60 to 65 million meals, over the last couple of decades
that's
is pretty cool.
amazing.
And like you mentioned too, diners get to go in for a great dining deal, and they get to try a new restaurant, and they get to discover a new place that's maybe outside of their
Yeah,
neighborhood, or maybe a little bit of a hike. They never would have gone there had it not been for this special
yeah.
event.
Well, it gives you an opportunity to try a restaurant that you would have never gone to because the price point was always so crazy high. And now, you can do that for a really incredible price. I want to talk about you, but I do want to talk about your mom a little bit because the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And I wanted to share something with you. So I have friends that have worked with your mom, and she was always known as very strong willed and knew exactly what she wanted. She was a stickler for perfection in her segments, which I just admire all day long.
Yep.
She was a very a force to be reckon with in a good way,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Sure.
if she had a mission, clearly she was going to get it done. And recently a conversation came up with our lead producer, our supervising producer. He was out at Anthony's. You
Mm.
know Anthony Decker,
Mhm.
who has a wonderful restaurant out in Brookshire there.
Yep.
Decker's, I just think, is fantastic. But the producer here just recently texted me maybe a week ago and said I had the most lovely conversation with Anthony Decker about Cleverly.
Aw.
I know. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to share it with you, and I wanted
Thank
to
you.
share it in a public way because I think it speaks so highly to
Yeah.
her. I texted Anthony this morning and said, "Can you tell me in detail what you shared with Mike?" He said, and I'll just read you his text.
Sure.
When I came back to Houston in 2004, she helped me get back on my feet and got me the job at Reliant Stadium, where I was involved with the birthday for Bush Sr., 41, that summer. Then in 2010, I opened up Decker's, and she helped me by coming to the studio several times to cook. And she came to Decker's and filmed us there as well. So, yes, she always has a special place in my heart, and her picture is hanging in the restaurant as well. Unfortunately, she never made it out to Anthony's, which is sad that but he said, I never knew she was sick. When I heard the news that she had passed, I burst out in tears and was very sad.
Yeah.
She was a true, giving, loving lady, did so much for others. I learned from her to do the same. Isn't that sweet?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very sweet. It is, this is, it's surprising because, it's weird to say this and it sounds weird, but I don't think I've heard about more people talk so lovingly about somebody who has passed other than my mom, which is kind of
Yeah.
crazy, right? Because, sometimes somebody passes away and then it's like a year or 2 years and then, people kind of tend to forget and kind of move on with their lives. Um, but that's not the case here, and
Yeah.
it's, Houston Restaurant Week's continuing to run and continuing to help the community. There's always people finding out about her even, right? And
Yeah.
so I hear about these kinds of impacts pretty often. Even, we're 5 years, past now. This is the fifth.
Yeah.
I can't even believe, it's been 5 years, but it hasn't subsided, like it's still, like I think I met somebody from Anthony's just about a month ago or so. And it's like a landmine, you
Oh,
never know when something is going to pop up, and you might have TV makeup on and you might just not be ready for it all,
right.
and so I remember though, like the first year, 2020, which was, she passed away in May of 2020, and then August of 2020 is right there, um,
Mhm.
and I remember like, you know, I was the one doing all of those TV segments, and it was my first time doing all of the TV segments, and even the station
'Cause
was
you
like not
literally stepped right in. I mean, it
yeah.
was like, someone's got to do this. There's no one more perfectly suited to do it than, uh, her daughter.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. I mean, and it was, but I just remember, like I would get ready in the morning, and the live shots were in the morning, and I would, you know, go to the restaurant. I'd be, totally fine. Everything is good because you're so focused on like getting the job done. You're focused on the
Right.
segment, you're focused on the interview, you're focused on, but then Tangi, as soon as I would get in the car and I was done for
Oh.
the day, I'd just like my
Oh,
whole drive home, and sometimes I'd have to pull over because it would be so tough. Yeah.
yeah. I wonder if in some way maybe that helped you in the grieving process. They say everyone has to have to go through a grieving process. It's a much
Yeah.
healthier way to deal with
Yeah.
a horrible, a
Loss.
passing of someone. So maybe there was some catharticism in that, cathartic
I think
help for you?
I think, what was funny was there was so much familiarity to it though, because it was like so much of my, communication with my mom, via telephone or text or whatever. Oftentimes it was, I can't talk to you right now. I'm about to do TV, or,
Yeah.
don't call me right now, because I'm standing here with a guest, and so, and it's like, holy moly, I get it, like, or I can't talk to you right now. I'm driving to radio or I'm driving to TV, and I've got a guest locked out, or I've got a guest that's late and I've got to handle it, and it's like, holy moly, like I totally get that, because and there was times when, I produced my mom's radio show in the late 2000s. So like 2006, 2007, 2008. And I was living in Dallas. And so I would drive down to Houston on Friday night. And then I would go and pick her up on Saturday morning. And I would drive her to the station. And then I would produce the show. Little did I understand, and she told me this, but it's something you don't understand until you live through it. But me driving her to the radio show in the morning was so helpful for her, because there was so many last minute things that she'd be doing in the car and on
Yeah,
her phone and
I
her
can see
iPad
that.
and this. And I'm like, wow, like I get it. Like I get
Yeah.
it. I need a driver, like
Well, I have to tell you, the producer of this show is, I don't know if he can hear you. He can hear you. I don't know if you can hear him if you talk. Is my son Cash. And so I would imagine everything he's hearing you say, I can't talk right now. I'll have to call you back. This isn't a good
Same
time.
thing, same thing, same thing. Because your kids are really the ones that can handle it the best, right? Like your kids and
Mhm.
your parents, they're when you're like, "I can't talk right now, click," like you know what that means. It's like, okay, mom is like, really doing TV. But I always remember just like that first year and like I'd be totally fine like TV makeup wise. And it was like a mental thing. And then as soon as I get in that car, as soon as I turn
Yeah.
that car, it just,
No,
people,
I
yeah,
can definitely relate to that.
yeah.
I wanted to talk though about you. Now you have stepped into this amazing role and from all accounts doing an incredible job.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure a lot of that comes from the passion that's in your heart and you've been so involved with it. But you have an interesting resume, even aside from all your work with restaurant weeks. You were a ball kid with the Houston Rockets.
When I was a kid, yeah. Yep.
I was like,
I've
that
Yep,
is fun. And when you were in college, is that you were a chess player? I knew you
yeah,
about your poker, and we'll talk about that, but I didn't
yep.
realize you were a chess player.
Yeah, I was kind of a nerd in high school and also a jock. Like I was super athletic, super duper, just loved sports and loved competing. And yeah, I was fortunate to be a ball kid for the Rockets. I was on the court for both
Wow.
championships. I have two rings that have my name on
Wow.
them. Yeah, it was a very special time. Houston in the mid 90s, which is when we had our championship teams, was just a very, very special place. And I happened to be the same age as some of the coaches' children. Like we went to school
Yeah.
together, and so it was really, really special. Really, really, Houston, I think, is the best city in the world to have a winning sports team. The energy
Oh,
is just
yeah.
unlike anything else. But yeah, I was also a chess player as a kid, and that was the family tradition. Actually, everyone in my family learned to play chess when they were about 3. That was just from generations before. Who knows?
Yeah.
Just the chess playing generations from countries far away. And Yeah, it was just something that we all, my mom, all, uncles, cousins, everybody just did, and ended up going to college. It was chess that got me into college, not basketball, which is always what, if we had bet
Interesting.
money on what would get me into college, everybody would have bet basketball. But it was chess. And so that was really fun. I was a part of kind of a first of its kind. It was a guinea pig program. Now it's very well established and one of the most prominent in the world. But um, of bringing chess players to University of Texas at Dallas with an emphasis on excellence. At the time, the school did not have a football team, and so I think it was also just a very intelligent marketing mechanism.
Yeah.
Like we're going to bring a bunch of chess players, and that became kind of the school became known for the brainy things, and it made sense because it's tech area, Richardson, Texas, which is where and
Yeah.
there's very um, it's a very historic place for technology origination that we all use today, and so it made a lot of sense. And while I was in college, I needed a way to make money, and so I had spent a lot of times with my mom being a single mom. I'd spent a lot of time in summer basketball camps. And I said, you know what? I can teach kids how to play chess and I can earn some money. And so within I ended up dropping out of college in my junior year
Wow.
to continue running the business. Within 5 years, I had expanded to over 100 cities across the US. I was like 23 years old and I had 40 people working
Wow.
for me. I had brick and mortar offices in Houston, Dallas, Washington, D.C. And then, like,
Wow.
yeah, like extracurricular, like in program chess curriculum at about 75 different schools in Houston and Dallas. And so my mom named the company for me. Like it was a nonstop back and forth every day, whether it was a brochure or a t-shirt design or a business card design. Like, okay, what's this and this? And so it was just her constantly, just line by line going, and this and everything. And the repetition of that, you mentioned the perfection that my mother was so well known for. Um, that is actually something I hear from most often from people, is that, her desire for excellence and the force that she was really, helped them in the end, because it would help
Mhm.
them improve in their business. Um, and so, yeah, that the business was very successful. It, has literally, and still exists today, teaching tens of thousands of kids how to play chess.
Oh, that's
Um,
fantastic.
and then in the early 2000s, there was just a kind of a big poker boom. And it, long story short, by the mid 2000s, I had decided that, this was the game I was, transitioning into. More money, kind of more glamorous. And
You
so a
were a
lot of my,
competitive poker player. I
yeah,
find that
yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah, so a bunch of my chess friends and I, we learned how to play, and that was kind of solidified my new path in the game. And so I, over the next several years, would establish myself certainly as one of the top female players. I was mostly an online player, but even still to
Yeah,
this day, I'm absolutely considered one of the best female players in the world. There's just not a whole lot of women that went through the
yeah.
whole, growing up, marriage, baby, uh, you know, and then the other side of my poker career, I did a lot of commentary. I was a consultant for MGM, BetMGM. So, there just weren't a lot of women in that world that had done all of that. And so, it's certainly
It's
been an
incredibly
interesting,
well, it's
non-standard
incredibly
background.
impressive. I think it's incredibly impressive. Why did you leave poker?
Well, in the summer of 2019, when I got the call that my mother was sick, um, I kind of knew that from that point on, things were going to be different. And I was eventually going to have a big decision to make. For the next 2 years, I spent back and forth between New Jersey, where I lived, in Houston.
Mhm.
Um, we moved here full time in 21 for our son to start kindergarten. And for that entire year up until 2022, I was still playing poker. And I was traveling a
Wow.
lot, and it was really tough with my son being in kindergarten. I had missed, no special events, but I had been out of
Mhm.
town a lot during his kindergarten year. In addition, I had a lot of work to do with Houston Restaurant Weeks and the foundation. And, I wasn't getting a salary, I wasn't being paid. My board had been encouraging me for years to, be all in with the foundation, to pay myself. But it took me about 3 years for me to finally make that full switch. And so, April of 22 is when I officially kind of stopped poker income. And then May of 22 is when I became an employee for the first time in my life.
Wow.
And so, yeah, coming up on 3 years now. So I don't play poker professionally anymore, but I still am very much a known figure in poker. And so I'm still very much involved, especially when it comes to women's poker.
Well, yeah, I saw something that said that the Poker Stars, which I guess is a group
Yes. Yep. They're a big, yeah,
recognized
operator.
and respected. Yeah. Recognized you as the most inspirational woman in poker in a ceremony in Spain.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was
Yeah.
actually a worldwide call for nominations. PokerStars is one of the worldwide leaders for, online gaming. And it was a big promotion, that they ran, and asked the poker public to nominate inspiring women in the game. And so it was super cool that I was one of the women that was chosen for that honor. And yeah, it was a very special, a whole weekend of events in Barcelona. And I unfortunately didn't get to attend, because, Tangi, I'm going to give you one guess on when do you think that Barcelona celebration was, out of all the
In
months in the
August.
calendar. You
August,
chose
no doubt.
August. right smack in the
Oh,
middle of Houston Restaurant Weeks a couple of years ago. And yeah, so I wasn't able to attend the ceremony, but it was a super honor, and I was just
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, now that you're an employee, tell
Yeah.
me about the Cleverly Stone Foundation, and has it been a tough transition? What was the transition like?
So the Cleverly Stone Foundation was kind of the first thing I did when, my mom passed away, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do this by myself. There were a few people who I have known for pretty much half my life at this point, who were my mom's kind of innermost circle, and that became the board. That just made the
Yeah.
most sense, that it was going to take a team of people. My mother's, most trusted, the people who were there from day one for HRW, because we
Mhm.
have, two board members. It's a very small board, but two of them literally have been there since day one, 2003.
Wow.
Um, and so, that was super important, because, even though I was also there in the beginning, um, there was a lot in the middle that I wasn't there for because of my own career and having a baby and getting married, and all of the
Oh,
life
yeah.
stuff and the career stuff. And so, I certainly needed to be brought up to speed on all things Houston Restaurant Weeks, but I also needed to understand all of the financial aspects of it. I needed to understand the numbers. I needed to understand, what makes this work, and when this doesn't work, what happens. And coming from a poker and a chess background, that actually ended up being something that I was pretty well suited and just used to doing. And so, you asked, was the transition difficult? I would say no. I would say that, once I understood, and I understood this pretty quickly, that the restaurant industry, the restaurant game is all numbers. Uh,
Mhm.
so is poker. And so this immediately just kind of calmed like my inner soul, almost, that I'm not being put in control of something that I have no idea as to, how to steer the
What to
ship.
do.
And so what's been really cool is I've been able to really lean into my own skill sets and my own strengths as it relates to data analysis and you know expected returns. These are all things
Mhm.
that we would study in poker, all very applicable to helping restaurants sell more meals, because when they sell more meals, the food bank gets a
Yeah.
bigger donation.
When do you all start? So, Restaurant Weeks, the big main event is August.
Mhm.
When do you guys, I would imagine right now, you're pretty hot and heavy into it, right? Getting prepped
Yeah,
and getting restaurants on board and
yeah. Right now, so this year is a little bit different because we're in a little bit of a turbulent economic area right now. A lot of restaurants are struggling right now in Houston. A
Mhm.
lot of restaurants have shut down. I think we've probably seen more restaurants, Tangi, shut down in the last 6 months than we have in any other 6 month period, at least in
Mm.
my last 5 years. Um, so we're starting a little bit early this year, in just educating the restaurants, educating the diners, reminding everybody
Mhm.
that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
There it is coming, it's here. Something to look forward to. Typically, restaurants who have been participating in the event for a long time, I want to say they start preparing in May. And when I say preparing, I mean looking at hiring staff, looking at what their menus are going to be, because in many cases they're serving more desserts in August
Right.
than they will the entire other 11 months of the year. And so they
Because
have to.
dessert comes with the option. I mean, that's part of the
Absolutely.
meal.
There's multiple courses, and dessert is in a
Yeah.
lot of those options, whereas the majority of the time, you know, meals, they're not selling desserts with meals, whereas in August almost every meal has a dessert. So these are things that they've got to source it. They have to figure out, well, if I'm going to be buying, 10,000 desserts,
Yeah.
I got to get a bargain. I got to figure out, like, who's going to do this for me. It's not like they can't just go to Kroger, and buy
No,
10,000 cookies.
don't.
No, don't. So we're in that period right now. We're also in our post billing period for Eat Drink HTX, which is the newer event. It's the sister event to Houston Restaurant Weeks that we launched a few years ago. It was my mother's idea. It was something she had been working on with Houston Food Bank for a few years, and then we just implemented it. But throughout her time as as a journalist and in Houston, having the radio show and being on Fox, she understood that the last 2 weeks of February are very slow for casual dining restaurants.
Mm.
Valentine's is very good for fine dining, and so people save. And then rodeo is an event that a lot of people save for as well. So a lot of the discretionary dining dollars for the last 2 weeks of February just get eaten up. And so that's why Eat Drink HTX exists during the last 2 weeks of February and benefits the Houston Food Bank.
Well, by the time this airs, it will probably be May. I can't believe we're
Okay.
at April right now. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
So what will be happening in May? What are the needs you guys have at this point as we head into, summer months and looking forward to August?
Yeah, so the end of May is our official start of Houston Restaurant Week season. It's usually the last week of May is when our first press release goes out, announces the dates. It's always August 1st through Labor Day. This is the time, though, that restaurants should be getting in touch with us if they want to participate. It's going to be a busy year. We are already seeing record peak interest numbers at this time of the year. So my advice to anyone looking to participate as a restaurant, sooner rather than later, because we are a very small nonprofit, and so our bandwidth gets stretched pretty thin when we're in season, May, June, July, and August. So preparing early for sure and getting in touch with us is definitely what they should be doing right now.
Is there anything that we can do, just as members, just as diners out
Yeah.
there in the world that would be helpful to you guys at all?
Yes, a lot, Tangi, of the Houston Restaurant Week's participants actually come to us by way of diner suggestion. So, and that
Mm.
happens maybe it's a new operator to Houston. We have a lot of people moving to Houston all the time. I
Yes.
mean, who blames them? It's the best city in the world. But they may not know about Houston Restaurant Weeks. And so diners are huge allies. I don't know, maybe they want a great dining deal in August too, who knows? But it's a really great way. So any diners out there, if you have a favorite spot, if you see a new place that's just opened, y'all are absolutely our feet on the ground, and y'all should let them know that August is the time that we dine out and do good in Houston, and we feed ourselves, but we also feed millions of people via the Houston Food Bank.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. The social media is so fun because everybody loves posting about food, and August is the official time to post about food. But we also find out about a lot of new restaurants that way too. So that's they'll send us on social media like, oh, you guys should reach out to them, or so yeah,
Yeah, well,
it's
I think that speaks to the power of food, right? It's the one unifier, and there's such an emotional connection. And all these years we've been, texting photos and posting on social media of food. I don't get tired of looking at them, especially when they're really, fun and interesting in a new spot that we don't know about. So food is the
absolutely.
unifier we all need.
We all do. And what's interesting too is, and this is such a heartwarming aspect of Houston Restaurant Weeks that you don't automatically consider, but over the last 2 decades, Tangi, Houston has expanded, right? Like you can drive
Yeah.
for an hour, 60 miles an hour
Yes.
in a straight line, and y'all are still in Houston, right?
I used
So
to think of Houston as a little LA. I was
yeah,
raised there. But now I'm thinking, you know what? It's kind of like LA.
it's kind of massive. But what I hear, one of the most common things I hear from people either on social or just out, people I meet out, is they thank us for having Houston Restaurant Weeks because this is their one official time of the year that they get together with their mom. because now they live separate, or their uncle or their cousins or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, that sounded really bad. Like the one time you get together with your mom. No, like relatives, friends, like, but
Yes.
because people have moved out, they've moved further north, they've moved further south, they've moved out west, and they're not as close to one another as they have been in the past. And so HRW, with the charitable component and the great dining deal component, is the perfect little
Yeah.
cohesive unit that continually, over and over, I mean, grandparents, just
It's
this
a
is,
good reason on every level to dine
yeah,
out. And I should mention Houstonians take it very seriously, and people have literally lists of places they're going to hit during restaurant weeks. So it is important for just the rest of us, diners that want to do the same. Make reservations. I mean, don't waste time when that website hits. Hit it, right? I mean, you want to get in and start playing because there's going to be a lot of great, wonderful, fun restaurants to choose from.
yeah, absolutely. July 15th is that coveted menu go live date that everyone waits for every year. And Tangi, those 2 weeks before that menu go live day, I cannot tell you how many people blow up my phone and my email, like, tell me who's the new superstar this year. Like, everybody wants the scoop because they want to make the
Yes.
reservations. They don't want to be locked out. But it is competitive. They get aggro on those 2 weeks. They want to know who's new. I want to go. They want to be the first. But it's so fun. I mean, it's like
Well,
how this kind of energy is just, it's so good. It's good
it's
energy.
great. It's
Yeah.
absolutely good energy. And it speaks to the star power, I think, and culinary exquisiteness that Houston has, right? It's so broad, it's so diverse. I have always said Houston is one of the most underrated cities for dining in terms of how the national media has treated it. I
Yeah.
think I'll put Houston food up with anybody else in the country. I think it's the most dynamic, wonderful dining scene anywhere. Why
Absolutely.
go
I
to
mean,
New York or LA when you can go to Houston? You can get
yeah.
fantastic food. So
Well,
it's a great
and
time to play.
that that exact sentiment, Tangi, pretty much speaks to why Houston Restaurant Weeks exists, because you remember we came here from New York. My mother, my
That's
mother
right.
worked on Fifth Avenue, New York. So you want to talk about somebody who was, had her finger on the pulse and the needle of fine dining. She was the China Crystal and Silver buyer on Fifth Avenue for B. Altman's, which is it was, a very fancy department store back when
Yeah.
fancy department stores were a thing, right? And so, this is somebody who grew up, dining on the QE2, white linen, white tablecloth, what, dining, very fine dining. So um, her experience of going to her parents' apartment in London, every couple of months, and going to boarding school in Switzerland, traveling all over the world. This was her life. This was how she was raised. And so when we moved to New York in the early 90s, we both were under the impression that, well, I shouldn't say both, I should say me. I was under the impression I would be riding a horse to school.
In Texas.
I did not realize there were motorized vehicles here. Now,
Oh, how funny.
now, granted, that's a very, polar view. However, it reflects overall the view on the East Coast, East Coast
Yep.
hardcore, rough and
Oh, I
tumble,
know.
those people out west, they don't know what they're doing, they're just a bunch of farmers, da da da. So my mother, coming from high society, fine dining, high everything, the elite of the elite, University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School of Business, her discovery of Houston and how international Houston was and how brilliant Houston was. Houston
Yeah.
Restaurant Weeks was almost like her love affair of that discovery, right? Like this understanding that, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. New York is not. Like, there's this other place, there's this other
Yep.
city that really has the goods. And what was it, like 5 years ago? We actually overtook New York as the most international city in the world. This is
Yes.
the cultural center of the world. We have more than anyone.
And I saw a statistic somewhere that said people eat out more per capita per week in Houston than even New York, which
This
that
is
kind of
true.
blew my mind too.
This is
I
true.
see
This
why.
is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's so
so,
easy to get a great meal.
yep. And so that was, long before the more recent and deserved understanding of Houston's specialness and the culinary,
Yeah.
the culinary realm that was developing here. Long before that, you had Cleverly the New Yorker coming out here and being surprised and being
Yeah.
pretty
That's
loud about
cool.
it as a result.
Well, thank goodness
Yep.
she was, and thank goodness we got to
Yep.
know her. I feel very blessed to have known her. She was something else, and I really admired her. She had such a professional high bar, and she held others to it too, and that's why she was so successful. And now look at her daughter. I just am so glad we got a chance to get to know you a little better, Katie. Our paths have crossed a little bit, but you and I've never really had a chance to sit down and chat. So I did have fun judging the truffle masters with you, by the way.
That was fun. Yeah, I love that event. I the intro It's so funny. Diane asked me to judge the event a few years ago for the first time. My mother was one of the first judges in 10 years ago that she had. She had 3 judges the first year that she had it. It was my mother, Eric Sandler, and it was John Demers, who John Demers might be before your time, but he was another
I remember
food
the name. Yeah.
journalist. Yeah. Tangi, I am not a truffle person. I am the person that goes to restaurants, and when I see truffle, I go to the other side of the menu.
Say, please don't put truffles.
I am not a truffle person. Okay. Here's what happened though. I said, you know what? I am going to learn about truffles. This is an excellent way for me to learn. I totally don't know what I need to know. And I knew that I would experience a range of truffle, like the really good way to have truffle and then the really not good way. And so I would learn a lot. Do you know that after that first year of judging 27 truffle dishes, I was only supposed to judge 13, but somebody didn't show up and some of
I
us
remember
judges had
that
to
year.
double up. Oh, yeah. 27 truffle dishes. I actually came away from that. You would think somebody who was not a truffle fan and then you just judge 27 in a row. I came away with a very deep appreciation for truffle. And now I knew how I could order it and how I could
Yeah.
consume it because I learned so much. And so that's one of the things I do also love about this is just so many fascinating aspects, and there's so many fascinating facets that you don't even think about. And there's a whole truffle industry. It's just a
Yeah, there is.
huge.
Well, and she's carved out quite a fascinating, DR delicacy, not only all the different products from all over the world, but just learning about all the different mushrooms she has, all the health benefits and all that. I find that fascinating
So
as
cool.
well. She's pretty
Really,
cool.
really cool. Yeah.
Well, I have really loved talking to you and letting folks know you a little more about you. Like I say, you've got quite an impressive resume, and I can't think of anyone more perfect um, to be filling the role with the Cleverley Stone Foundation. And everybody look out for Restaurant Weeks. They're coming. They'll be here before you know it. The
Yeah.
hottest month of the year, but the best for dining out. So
Yeah. Get your stretchy pants ready.
I know, right? That is so true. That is so true.
Yep.
Katie,
Well,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. It was really nice to talk to you. I appreciate it so much. And I truly appreciate all your support of my mom and Houston Restaurant Weeks over the years. I really do. I definitely saw all the emails and all the
Aw.
correspondence, and you're very sweet. And I very much appreciate your friendship to my mom. So
I had the opportunity to work with Cleverly several times. She was something else, a force of energy and a very intelligent woman. I can tell her daughter Katie is a lot like her. I love knowing her. Have a great day, everyone. Till next time, cheers to good taste. Get social with us. Follow us on Instagram at Goodtaste TV.